Now, a new report from Truth in Accounting on the fiscal health of U.S. states, finding several mountain states in the top 10. That includes Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho, while Washington is well in the bottom half for fiscal health. Now, this report analyzes the most recent data for state finances. It's for fiscal year 2024. So for most states, the fiscal year for 2024 ran from July 1 of 23 through June 30th of 24. And at the close of fiscal year 2024, 25 states, including Washington state, were unable to cover their financial obligations, according to this Truth in Accounting report summary. Now, Wyoming ranked third on the list, doing very well, very fiscally healthy. Montana was eighth, and Idaho ranked 10th within the nation's top tier for fiscally stable states. Washington came in 31st on the list. And I spoke with Mountain States Policy Center analyst Emily Strasberg about that.
Within that report, we were looking at where the states placed and also how they have improved over the last 4 years. For instance, Wyoming has stayed in the top three for the last 4 years. They have consistently stayed there. But Montana, for instance, 4 years ago, they were in the 22nd spot. And then this report that just came out, they jumped all the way up to the eighth spot. So we were looking about how improvements have looked in the past, as well as how consistency has continued these states to be in their top rankings. And while Washington has one of the strongest economies in America, it's still ranking 31st in fiscal health, but Montana and Wyoming are in the top states. So the difference isn't really economic strength, but it's this fiscal discipline. And these top ranked states, such as Montana and Wyoming, as we were looking at, they generally maintain the larger reserves, lower long-term liabilities, and they seem to be more cautious about creating permanent spending commitments than Washington does. They limited ongoing spending commitments to recurring revenue growth. So exactly what we were talking about, just trying to even that out in the long run. But they also paid down their debt and those long-term liabilities when those surpluses occurred. They were like, all right, we're going to pay off our debt. And Washington has yet to do that as well. But also, in terms of economic policies, they were using their one-time revenue for one-time projects instead of permanent programs. So if there was something they needed to fix, it was a one-time project for that rather than implementing something into the policy and state world that would be reoccurring.
Now, according to this Truth in Accounting report, based on how much debt there was for fiscal year 2024 for Washington state, what our spending was versus what we promised to spend, or what we brought in, I should say, versus what we promised to pay out. That obligates each taxpayer in Washington state to what they call a tax burden of $1,800. So every single person in Washington state would have to chip in an extra $1,800 to make us basically a wash for fiscal year 2024. So as a result, they gave us, the Truth in Accounting folks gave Washington state a letter grade of C in the report. And again, our ranking was 31st out of the 50 states. I should tell you, North Dakota was number one. I found this number to be fascinating. So they ended fiscal year 24 with an $18.3 billion excess, more than they needed to pay off their bills. And that meant the state had a taxpayer surplus of, get this, for every taxpayer in North Dakota, $63,000 credit. And as a result, they have cut some taxes. They've offered some tax breaks, put some into permanent law. Montana has been doing something very similar. And so North Dakota, number one on that fiscal ranking list, earning an A grade, of course, from Truth in Accounting. And Strasberg at Mountain Policy States Center said that they noted some of the similarities in the states that did really good in the rankings. She said one was limited ongoing spending commitments to recurring revenue growth. So you're going to bring in this much every year. These will be the things that we can obligate ourselves to year after year after year. They also say these states in good shape have been paying down their fiscal debt and taking care of long-term liabilities in years when they have surpluses. unlike just promising how you're going to spend that all out when it's a surplus. Also not rating rainy day funds, also not rating pension programs. It seemed like every single thing that she went through in the list of the fiscally healthy states were things that we're not doing here in the state of Washington. So something to think about. I'm putting an article up on our Center Square Washington page today on both of today's topics in our Washington in Focus daily episode. So check that page out, as well as other stories from my colleagues here in Washington. So that's it for today's June 3rd episode of Washington in Focus Daily. I really appreciate you watching, and I hope you'll tune in again and watch us on Thursday.